they made a move that they thought fit their team, and we made a move. And that's what is funny. Like, there can be good moves for both teams. It doesn't have to be a winner and a loser. Everybody's trying to validate, well, who got the best, the trade. And sometimes that does happen, but.
You're tuned in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, guiding your gridiron journey, none other than your host, former NFL lineman, Ross Tucker.
Oh, yeah, it is. But it's not just any Ross Tucker Football Podcast. It is a Wisdom Wednesday presented, of course, by DraftKings. I'm Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman. Most of you know that. 5 teams, 7 years, which I'm very thankful for because that enabled me to get, I guess, all the gigs I have now, calling college and NFL games for CBS on TV, NFL games on Westwood One on the radio. I do the Eagles preseason games and some other work for that franchise as well. And I got all these podcasts. We'll record both Fantasy Feast podcasts today. Drop the part 1 today, part 2 tomorrow. Of course, the Even Money Betting podcast is already up, and I just can't highly recommend it enough. I mean, last week, Steve and I were up a combined 34 units. I was up 19 units. He was up 15 units. There's a reason why so many people listen or watch that show, youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. And if you like college football or the NFL draft or betting on college football games, highly recommend Emery Hunt as well on the College Draft podcast. We will have the civilian GOAT, Greg Cosell, on tomorrow's Ross Tucker Football podcast. Today, how about Brandon Beane, the GM of the AFC East leading Buffalo Bills? Curious to get his thoughts as we're now 6 days away from the NFL trade deadline. We are 2 days away from me announcing more winners. So it could be anybody that engages with @RossTuckerPod on any social media platform, especially a repost or a comment or a reply or whatever. Any social media platform @RossTuckerPod or @RossTuckerNFL. Sponsor confirmations. Take advantage of anything you hear on the show, especially my friends at westshorehome.com/Ross. Why would you not get the free estimate to at least see where you're at there? And then I love the YouTube comments and doing those videos for you guys. YouTube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. We will start, however, with Brandon Beane, the big show. Look, who else would Brandon Beane be sponsored by but Labatt Blue Light? Because they're made in Buffalo. I love Buffalo. I love Labatt Blue Light. It's what you do with friends. It's what you do when you're watching football. It's how you live life to the power of we. Always enjoy responsibly. Beer, Labatt USA, Buffalo, New York.
The Big Show.
Well, very excited to be joined by a guy I've gotten a chance to know a little bit more over the last couple of years. Gosh, this year I called the first 3 Buffalo Bills games. First one on TV, next 2 on the radio. He's done an outstanding job for the franchise. My favorite team that I played for, the Buffalo Bills. Talking about Brandon Beane, of course. Brandon, thanks so much for coming on the show, man. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, Ross, man, it's we've missed you. We got you early in the year. We have to start getting you again. We started well with you.
You know what? I was getting notes from Bills fans because you were 3-0 with me doing the games, and then you lost 2 in a row. But
we'll put you on the plane, whatever it takes to get those W's.
Hey, you got it rolling again now. I got a bunch of questions. I guess the first one, we're a week out from the trade deadline as you and I are talking here. I guess I'm curious your thoughts on the timing of it, because I know this is the first year, if I'm not mistaken, that it's a week later. I know there were some teams that wanted it to be even later.
Yeah.
I guess I'm assuming most GMs would want it as late as possible, but maybe not. What are your thoughts on kind of the timing and where the NFL has it right now?
Yeah, I mean, listen, if you can tell me when I'm going to have injuries or what my roster looks like, yes and no. It's one of those things. There was 2 different proposals last year, one to move it a week, and there was another proposal to move it 2 weeks later. Ultimately, the group settled on let's move it 1 for now, but I'm sure there's still going to be another push, for another one later. And listen, I'm not hardcore one way or the other. because every year kind of has its own set of challenges. What's your health like? What's the option? What's your cap like? I'm always thinking too, like I would hate to be this team that, I've said this before, where you build your team, you build a good team, and then all of a sudden some player and you kind of use your cap dollars or whatever, and then some other teams didn't build as much in the spring, but they're a game or two behind you. They start fast and they've got a lot more dollars and they go in and swoop and take a couple of really good players that you just can't afford. That's always been in the back of my head, like, what's the best strategy here? Is it to save a bunch of cap dollars and trade for them mid-season, or build it to begin with? So there's a lot of different strategies for it, but ultimately we're always going to do what's best for the Bills that time. Whether it's because if this was a year ago today, this would have been the week of the trade deadline. So 1 week later, I don't think is a bad thing. And again, I wouldn't be surprised if it's voted on this spring again, from some people to potentially move it back even more.
It's really interesting what you said, because I would think, the more it gets moved back, the more maybe people might save some cap dollars, because they might think, hey, we got a real shot here later in the year. But also the more teams might be willing to say, well, we're definitely out of it now, which I know the NFL, that's what they've always not wanted, is for teams to really be moving on from a bunch of guys. The Browns a couple weeks ago moved on from Amari Cooper. You guys got him. Andrew Brandt, the former executive, was on the show last week and thought you guys got an incredible trade because of Coop's contract for this year. Knowing what you guys had done in the offseason from a salary cap standpoint, how fortunate, I guess, on some level, Brandon, were you guys that a guy with Coop's ability was available at that cap number, that salary for you for the rest of the year?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. I was explaining to someone here, there's this, you got a certain size of candidates that are potential trade, but really when your cap is where ours is in the way we've structured it, ours is a much smaller pool. You name the position of guys we can look at, because we've got to either get teams to be willing to eat the space, which means you're going to have to up your draft capital, or you just got to say, I can't do that. And I know a lot of people, we did check in on Devontae Adams, and that was always going to be a hang up with his situation. The Raiders never really seemed interested in, swallowing, a bunch of his contract to make it fit within our team. And I know there was another team, I believe, that was similar situation to us. So it's part of the deal. And you're right. If it continues to get moved back, maybe you have to make sure you get a lot more money, on your cap to be able to make some more moves. But no, Amari worked out. His deal worked out great for us. Cleveland had already converted him prior to the season. And so that was a guy that we had kind of circled if, if Cleveland was interested. I know his name had been mentioned before, that if they ever, were willing to part ways, we should, stay in touch with them, and got a great relationship with Andrew. And, it was a pretty seamless, move on, for both those. I think it's one of those, it's a win-win. Their season hasn't gone as well, and obviously their quarterback gets injured. So you understand why they were willing to do what they did.
Brandon, do you anticipate being active anymore before now and next Tuesday?
It's like, Ross, I'm always going to naturally check around and look. It's to me, I feel like that's my job. I got to look under every rock to see if there's anything that makes sense. Will there be some player that fits everything, fits our scheme, whatever side of the ball it is, fits the parameters of what compensation that club would want to move them. And then, the biggest piece of all, does his contract fit, we are tied up against the cap. And so all those things would have to work, which makes it say probably the Vegas odds are probably not high, but we're still going to swing for the fence. Last year, we got Rasul Douglas with about an hour to go in the deadline, and it was the same thing. We were tied against the cap, but Green Bay had converted him as well, and we were definitely having some injuries at corner, and so that move, getting Rasul here. And the thing about his deal, which really worked out, we have a second year on it, and which he's on that second year now.
It's interesting because I feel like a lot of times those trade deadline deals don't work out as well as Rasul's. I mean, that was fantastic. That's worked out great for you guys. You know, it's interesting because obviously everybody knows about the Chiefs and the success they've had, which is obviously remarkable. I'm always blown away, Brandon, how many one score playoff games they somehow come out on the better end of. I mean, that's not like talk about Vegas odds that they would never have the odds that a team could win somehow, some way that many one score games. And yet I admire Veach for being aggressive, whether it's DeAndre Hopkins or Uche. I know you're aggressive as it is. Do you feel any extra added pressure when the defending champs, your big rival there in the AFC, when they're making moves, or do you have to totally block that out and just only think about the Bills and their roster and their situation?
Yeah, I mean, listen, you're competitive. You never want another team, somebody in your division, an AFC rival, whatever it is. You never want those guys to get better. You're all again, we're wired competitively, but ultimately, we always have to do what's best for our team, and that's whether we make a trade with another club or whatever it is. I mean, people got mad at us at the draft for trading with the Chiefs or whatever, and ultimately, they made a move that they thought fit their team, and we made a move. And that's what is funny. Like, there can be good moves for both teams. It doesn't have to be a winner and a loser. Everybody's trying to validate, well, who got the best, the trade. And sometimes that does happen. But I think there's other times where both teams can succeed after a move. Each team had a different need or a different wish for their team, in that situation. So no, ultimately, you said the Chiefs, they're a great organization. They've won a lot of great games, and you're right. They've been battle tested, and this season's no different. They haven't blown a lot of people out, but they know how to win, and there's something to that, and a lot of credit to Veach and Coach Reed and how they do things.
Let's talk about some of the guys already on your roster. You mentioned that trade with the Chiefs. You guys end up taking Keon Coleman. And it's interesting because there were some games earlier in the year where I thought, okay, he's a contested catch guy. That's going to be a little bit tougher at this level. I didn't see he wasn't a guy that was getting a lot of separation. But these last couple of weeks, he's really starting to come on. And I'm assuming you and Josh Allen and obviously Sean McDermott have to really feel good about sort of his progression, not even really midway through the year.
Yeah, I mean, Keon, he's still, I think we always have to remember, he's still a kid in my eyes. He's a young man, but he's 21. And so I know how I was as a 21-year-old. and Ross, you could probably, probably look at yourself and go, God, I did some dumb things. And so as part of our job is to help grow this young man, not only as a football player, but as a person on the field, professional habits, how we do things, learn a pro style offense, the playbook. He's not getting a signal from the sideline somewhere, run this route or line up here or whatever. I mean, he's got to hear that whole huddle call and he's got to convert routes, coverage. And again, these receivers, you watch college receivers, sometimes these guys never get pressed. They don't face the DBs that this league has. And so, you don't have to have a great release package in college. In the pros, I think it's one of the big things Keon's really, I think he's improved a lot, his release package, and it's going to continue to get better. And I do think one of the things that he does well that we saw is that basketball ability, that lateral agility, lateral quicks. I think it's just learning the nuances of the pro game, how he has to win at this level. Sometimes it is the contested ball with his size and strength. He's got great leaping ability. Obviously, he's got great hands. But I do think his route running has improved, and he's continuing to learn the offense, get the feel. And him and Josh working on that rapport as well, where he wants the ball on a back, shoulder, high, low, behind him, all those little nuances that I think we missed some early in the year, but Josh is starting to get more confident in him and probably vice versa.
Speaking of receivers, Brandon, Khalil Shakir, I am so impressed by, especially as a fifth round pick, that there's some crazy stats out there about his efficiency and just the yards per target, not even yards per catch, yards per target. Every time Josh even looks his way, you probably don't want me to hype him up too much because he's eligible for a new contract starting after this year. But I'm still not sure nationally people realize what he's doing. Seems to me like he's a guy that maybe this postseason or later on in the year, people will realize, wow, this is a really, really good football player who probably helped you move on from Diggs, knowing kind of what you had in Shakir.
Yeah, I mean, I think you just summed it up the best at the very end of when you were describing him. You said football player, a really good. That's what he is. I think he could play a lot of positions. You could probably beef him up. He could probably go play running back. He's just he's a natural football player, and whether he's playing inside in the slot, which is probably his position one, or if he can even go outside and survive. I'm not going to say that's his position one by any means, but he's just got a real good feel for the game. He sees the game. Some guys see the game through like a real tiny hole. I think it's wide open. I think he looks at it probably similar to quarterbacks do. He sees what defenses are trying to do him. And so he plays so smart, so heady. And because he sees the game the way he does, I think him and Josh have clicked once, we got him going late his rookie year, made a couple plays even in the playoffs for us that year. And then last season, as the year went on, again, I don't think a lot of people on the outside, because we had Gabe Davis, because we had Diggs and some of those guys. But now that those guys are not here, to your point, Ross, I think he's, and he's felt more comfortable in year three. Josh trusts him, innately just to be where he's supposed to be. First off, make the catch. It is called receiver. We talk about it all the time. As a receiver, you got to be able to catch the dang ball. But then what he does with it after it. And he's a tough runner. Whether he's catching a bubble, whether he's going deep, he's a guy I can't say enough good things about and what he does for our team and our offense. And he's one of those guys, what makes you love him more, Ross, he's so humble. He doesn't say anything. If you've ever talked to him and you got to pull it out of him, if he was just sitting next to you on a bus, you wouldn't even know he's an NFL football player.
Yeah, and he'll block too.
Yeah.
Like he's not a huge dude, but as a slot guy, he'll block, which I love. I know none of us ever want to see anyone get injured, obviously, but on some level with your role with your organization, man, you had to take some pride when the defense was playing well and you were winning games without arguably your three best defensive players. I mean, there was a couple games there. No Milano, no Terrell Bernard, no Taron Johnson. You're still winning those games without all three guys at the second level. And the guys filling in with them were young guys and guys you had drafted, and Spector and Williams. And, again, fans and media might not dive in as much, but you and I know, boy, that's when you're really doing work, is when the next guys that go in that are later round picks go in there and play well, and your team still wins. I'm sure you and the whole staff took a lot of pride in that.
Yeah, it's we all know this is a long season, 17 games, and you're going to have to go through some ups and downs, some adversity, and you want to have as much depth as you can. And again, we truly believe in the draft and develop concept here, and I think our coaches do an excellent job of really having those next. I mean, I've been on staffs before where you're just kind of focused on the guy you have. You're not worried about the guy, but guess what? If his number is going to get called at some point. And, I think these guys do a real good job of, even our practice squad guys. We've emphasized and we've given examples over the year of how many practice squad guys are going to come up, or a back end depth guys like some of the names you mentioned they're going to play in December and January. I mean, we had AJ Klein, who was in an RV with his family. AJ had a great career, but was on the back end of it last season. And we get some injuries at linebacker late, and he was on an RV trip with his family. We call him back to here, and ultimately he had to start for us in the playoffs, at least one game versus the Chiefs, maybe the one before, I can't remember. But the lesson here is time and time again, injuries are going to happen, and it's our job to make sure the next man up is ready. And a credit to the coaches and a credit to those guys, Spector, Dorian Williams, Cam Lewis, all many guys, some D linemen, Dwayne Carter, before he got injured recently. We lost Ed Oliver for, a couple of weeks with a hammy, and he stepped in there and started. So it'll happen. We're halfway through the season, and hopefully we can start getting some guys back. But I'm sure we'll get to December, and we're going to need some other young guys to step up.
Brandon, so much. I really appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you so much. I know I'll be back up there when you play the Niners. I think it's a Sunday night, maybe December 1st, I want to say. I know for sure I got that one on the radio. We'll see what pops up on TV over the next few weeks. Thanks so much for coming on the show, man. I really appreciate it.
You got it, Ross. Look forward to seeing you soon. Keep those wins coming for us when you come back to town. Appreciate you.
Love that interview with Brandon Beane. Just like I love saving money, and I love making my wife happy. I'm doing both right now. westshorehome.com/Ross. We're getting a couple new doors put in. So we got the entry door last year, maybe the year before, which is beautiful, by the way. We're doing family pictures today in front of that door. But now I kind of feel like I want to get the other doors to match up with the front door. That's so beautiful. Literally, people comment on our door. It's awesome. So here's the deal. At westshorehome.com/Ross, I'm getting 72 months, 0% interest with up to $1,500 off. Anyone listening that understands math, you understand how great of a value that is. westshorehome.com/Ross, and you get to see my house. westshorehome.com/Ross. See the before and after. Let's talk about my friends from Smirnoff, the world's #1 vodka and an official vodka partner of the NFL. I love this. Smirnoff is giving fans in select areas of the country, like maybe where you live, a chance to win the ultimate game day experience, from tickets to sideline passes and much more. All you have to do is go to gamedays.com until November 15th to enter for your chance to win. Smirnoff, we do game days. Please drink responsibly. Smirnoff number 21 vodka, distilled from grain, 40% alcohol by volume. The Smirnoff Company, New York, New York. Please do not share with anyone under legal drinking age. No purchase necessary, 21 plus, ends 11/15/24. See rules at website for participating area and other important details. Sponsored by Diageo Americas Incorporated, New York, New York. We do gamedays.com.
Tuck's Takes.
All right, Ross, the biggest news from yesterday is the Colts. They're officially going Joe Flacco as their starting quarterback.
Not much of a surprise, right, Jack? After Shane Steichen had said Monday that they're evaluating everything, that people almost never stay with the incumbent quarterback after they say that. Like, almost never. Especially if it's a top 5 pick, right? You're like, no, he's our guy, he's our guy, he's our guy. If you say you're evaluating, there's a pretty good chance you're moving on. There's actually a lot I can say about this situation, Jack. So I'm going to make this my Labatt take of the week, presented by Labatt Blue Light, the pristine Canadian Pilsner. Enjoy your beers together so you can live life to the power of we. Always enjoy responsibly. Beer, Labatt USA, Buffalo, New York. Shane Steichen pretty much had to make this move because it is very difficult to stand in front of a room of 100 grown men and tell them, especially 50 of whom are putting their body on the line every Sunday. So the wear and tear, the threat of injury, it's really hard to face those guys. And they know, and you know, that you're not giving them the best chance to have the reward that comes with a victory. That's a tough spot for Steichen. He's doing the right thing by starting Joe Flacco. If Flacco plays well and they go to the playoffs, great. If Flacco plays poorly and after a few games he's struggling, bench him. If Flacco plays okay and at some point they're out of it, get Flacco out of there, put Richardson back in there. It's not over for Richardson. Jordan Love sat for 3 years. Aaron Rodgers sat for 3 years. Maybe Richardson would be better off watching a little bit. He'll get another chance to play, but for right now, Steichen has to be able to look those guys in the eye and tell them he's giving them every chance to win, every chance to make the playoffs. And Jack, before you move on, I actually didn't talk about this that much the other day, but in terms of what Richardson did, I really don't know what's worse. Did I talk about this already? Like, number one, the fact that he's in that bad a shape that after one play like that, he needed to come out. Has he ever watched Lamar Jackson or Kyler Murray or even Josh Allen? Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray do it like half the plays in the game. You have to be in better shape than that, number one. Number two, the fact that he did it. Like, he actually did it. You know, it's bad that he's in bad condition, but then he actually tapped out and came out. And maybe the worst part is after the game when he said he didn't think there's anything wrong with it. He's like, yeah, I was tired. I came out for a play. Like, that is mind-boggling to me.
Got some trades. The Chiefs, they're trading a 6th-round pick to the Patriots for edge rusher Joshua Uche. The Ravens, they're going to swap late-round picks to trade for Panthers wide receiver Deontay Johnson. And the Vikings, they grab Jags left tackle Cam Robinson.
Right. So it's like a pick swap. Late round. It's a 7th-round pick that the Vikings get. 5th-round pick for the Jags. Depending on how much Cam Robinson plays, the Vikings no longer get the 7th-rounder. And if he plays a lot, the Vikings actually give up a 4th-rounder. So they had to do something, though. Speaking of Steichen trying to give the team the best chance to win, the Vikings don't have another guy to play left tackle. The Jags actually do in Walker Little. And so the Jags are actually probably happy to move on from Cam Robinson. I don't know why they franchise tagged him, paid him, whatever. And then the Deontay Johnson trade's the one that's surprising to me. It's just a pick swap. And the Panthers are taking on some of the salary. I'm a little surprised that the Panthers were not able to get more for Deontay Johnson. That's the part that surprised me there. And Uche, I mean, the same guy that said he took less money to stay with New England because he was happy there, now he gets traded. I mean, that's why you just always go for the money, Josh, because they don't care how you feel if you like New England. So anyway, Chiefs trade a 6th-round pick. They continue to load up like we talked about with Brandon Beane. On the injury front, speaking of injuries, Jack, Stephon Diggs done for the year as suspected with that torn ACL. Obviously a significant blow to the Texans for the rest of this year and for Diggs, who's going to be a free agent after this season. Other than that, I think we're done here.
Thanks for tuning in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Make sure to also check out Even Money, Fantasy Feast, and College Draft, all on the DraftKings Network on Samsung TV Plus, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.
Shout out myfrontpagestory.com. Man, I love family. I love telling family how I feel about them. And I love sending you guys automatic signed autographs, press passes, pictures, whatever you want. If you get a story for a loved one at myfrontpagestory.com, just make sure you forward it to me, ross@rosstucker.com, backofficeschedule.com, humanetnyc.com, Sporticulture, Pizza Boy Brewing.